Okay, hi everyone! So, my name is Julia Kay, and today we are going to be solving quadratics by completing the square. Okay, so basically, to define quadratics, defined, it is involving the second and no higher power of an unknown quantity or variable. So basically, this is like the basic quadratic formula, x squared, wait, hold on. Here is, Kate, damn.
Oh my god. Okay.
So here's just a basic example of the quadratic formula, x squared plus 2x plus 1. And then here's an example of what that would look like on a graph. Okay, so to start out, we're going to start with example 1. So we have x squared plus 4x minus 38 equals 0. So we're just trying to solve for x. So there are strict steps in completing the square. So the first step is going to be to move the constant. So basically we're just going to be then we get to step 2, which is to divide by the coefficient of x squared. So the coefficient of x squared here is obviously 1. So we're going to divide each term by 1, and that'll give us just x squared plus 14x equals 38. Okay, so step 3 gets a little more complicated. So what we're going to be doing is we are taking our formula, x squared plus 14x equals 38, and we're going to be taking the coefficient of x and square it. So basically we're taking half of the coefficient and squaring it. So we have 14 divided by 2, that's making it half. Then we take 7 and we square that, and we get 49. Okay, so step 4, we're going to take that 49, and we are going to add the squared term to both sides. So here we are adding 49 to the left side and the right side, and we end up getting x squared plus 14x plus 49 equals 87. Wait, stop. Okay, so on to step 5, we're going to be converting the left side to squared form. So we have x squared plus 14x plus 49, and we're basically just factoring. And so we get x plus 7 times x plus 7 equals 87. So how we did this is we took this formula right here, and we said x times x equals x squared. And then we said 7x and 7x make 14x, and then 7 times 7 equals 49. So now the last step is to take the square root of each side and solve for x. So what I did is now that I have x plus 7 squared equals 87, I'm square rooting both sides to get x plus 7 equals plus or minus 87. So a common misunderstanding is that some people just do plus or just minus, but it has to be plus or minus, because when working with square roots, it can either be negative 2 times 2 equals 4 or 2 times 2 equals 4. So you have to make sure that you get both answers, because it's 2 answers in quadratics. So back to step 6. Once then we're going to subtract 7 from both sides, and our final answer will be x equals negative 7 plus or minus the square root of 87. Okay, so on to example 2. It's pretty much the same thing, except just a different problem, I guess. So step 1 is to move the constant again. So we have x squared plus 6x minus 59 equals 0. So we are going to be adding 59 to both sides, and we get x squared plus 6x equals 59. So step 3 was the kind of complicated one. We're taking half of the x coefficient and then squaring it. So the x coefficient here is 6, so we're taking half of 6, which is 3, squaring that, and we get 9. Okay, So step 4, we are just adding that squared term to both sides. Insert bathroom noise. Okay, so now we're adding the squared term to both sides. So we have x squared plus 6x plus 9, and then equals 59 plus 9. So we get x squared plus 6x plus 9 equals 68. So, yeah, just like please talk while I'm recording. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, so step 5, we're converting the left side to squared form.
My shoe's in it.
We're converting the left side to squared form now. So we get x plus 3 times x plus 3 equals 68 because we went like this. We said x times x equals x squared, and then 3x plus 3x is 6x, and then 3 times 3 is 9. Thank you very much. So then we have x plus 3 squared equals 68. So for the last step, we are taking the square root of each side and solving for x. So we have our square root over 6 plus 3 squared and 68. So this one, the end gets a little more complicated on this one. So now that we have x plus 3 equals plus or minus 68, we are going to say, well, so 68 can be simplified. So I have a little factoring tree over here. So 68 goes into 2 and 34, then 34 goes into 2 and 17. So when you have two of the same prime numbers, one can go outside and then the other one will disappear. So now I have two prime numbers, so 2 will be going on the outside and 17 goes on the inside, and so we get x plus 3 equals plus or minus 2 17 squared. I mean cubed. I mean the square root of 17.
Okay.
Okay. So now our final answer is x equals negative 3 plus or minus 2 17. 2 root 17. Okay. So okay. So for our example 3, it's a little more complicated, but we're going to start with the equation 10x squared plus 4x minus 77 equals 9. So for our step 1, we're going to be moving the constant to the other side. So for step 1, we're just going to be adding 77 to both sides, and we get 10x squared plus 4x, and then we're going to say 77 plus 9. So 10x squared plus 4x equals 86.
Oh, wait. Okay.
Okay, so step 2, we are dividing through by the coefficient of x squared. So for step 2, we are going to be dividing by 10 through each term. So 10 divided by 10 is obviously 1, so we get x squared. And then plus, so 4 divided by 10, we get, let's make that into a fraction. We get 2/5, so 2/5 x, and then 86 divided by 10. Let's make that into a fraction as well. We get 43/5. Okay, so step 3 is the more complicated step. We're going to be taking half of the x coefficient and squaring it. So our x coefficient is 2/5. Oh my god, what is that? Is it 2/5?
What, you x?
No, because there's an x on the bottom. I said 2 over x. Okay, so this is supposed to be a 5, rip. So step 3, we're taking 2/5, and we are dividing that by 2 or multiplying by 1/2. So doing this in the calculator, I'm doing 2/5 times 1/2, and I get, let's make that into a fraction, I get 1/5. And then I'm going to be squaring this answer to get, I get 1/25. Okay, so step 4, We have, stop. Okay, so we are going to be, for the fourth step, we're going to add the squared term to both sides of the equation. So I have x squared plus 2/5 x plus 1/25, that's this. And then we're going to be adding, so 43/5 plus 1/25. So let's break that into a fraction to get 216/25. So for step 5, we're going to convert the left side to squared form. So for step 5, we can set up our factoring parentheses, and we already know that it's going to be equal to 216/25. So I have x times x to get x squared, and then now we have to find what times what makes 1/25. So here's a trick. Maybe it's Mollusco.
Go.
Okay, so I am converting this to converting the left side to squared form. So now we just have to figure out what times what makes 1/25. So, this is supposed to be. So, a quick tip is that the number here will always be the number that goes down here, because 1/5 times 1/5 is 1/25, and then 1/5 plus 1/5 is 2/5. So this was supposed to be 1/5. Once again, rip. So now, since these are the same, we can go ahead and square that, and it's still equal to 216/25. So here she is, the last step, number 6. We are just taking the square root of each side and solving for x. So putting the square root over each side, and so we get x plus 1/5 equals plus or minus 216/25. And so now we're just going to see what the square root of 216/25 is. So let's make that into a fraction. Okay, that doesn't, yep, okay, so, okay, so this is our answer. It's not the prettiest, but since we were working with fractions in more advanced coefficients, it turned out to be ugly. Okay, so lastly, for my study tip is to study 2 days before your damn test. Okay, so lastly, I have a study tip, and it's to study 2 days before your test so that you remember everything better. Yep.